Good afternoon. Welcome to day 3 of Nevada Digital Learning Week. I'm Caitlin Llewellyn from the Nevada Department of Education, Office of Early Learning and Development, and I'm joined by my colleague, Mark.
Thank you, Caitlin. My name is Mark Rincon, and I'm so honored to be here with you this afternoon. I'm with the Office of Instructional and Standards Supports, and very excited to be here.
Just to let you know, this meeting is now being recorded. In addition to joining us live each day, remember you can participate by following the NVDL Week 21 hashtag on social media and share your digital learning stories with us. As we continue on this week, hearing from stakeholders across the state and having different folks join us, we would like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples whose traditional homeland, where we are presenting from and where people are joining us from, in what is now the state of Nevada. The Numa, also known as Northern Paiute, the Nuwu, Southern Paiute, Washishu, Washoe, and Nui, Western Shoshone.
We are lucky enough to have had the chance to chat with a school administrator and 2 teachers who you will get to hear from today. Because of the length of the interviews, today's meetings will go longer than 12:30. But remember, you can access the recording later on our website if you need to hop off at 12:30 p.m. And now we're going to play our first video.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much again for joining us today. We are pleased to welcome our next guest, Lynn Manning John, who is an enrolled member of the Duck Valley Shoshone Paiute tribes. She is an educator currently serving as the vice principal of the Owyhee Combined School. Mrs. Manning John holds a BA in Education and Child Study from Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, and an MED in Educational Leadership from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Lynn, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to be here with us. We are so grateful to have you here. So I'll just jump right into our first question. Can you start by telling us a little bit more about the community you serve and how long you've been in your current role?
Sure. I serve the community of Owyhee, which is located on the Duck Valley Indian Reservation. We are about 100 miles north of Elko, in the Elko County School District. We are likely the most geographically isolated school in our state, and probably in the nation, in the contiguous US. I'm a product of this community. I attended this school. I graduated from high school here and left for 20 years. I worked in Las Vegas for the Clark County School District. I worked in Reno for the Washoe County School District. And 7 years ago, I returned here and began my role as an administrator in this school. So this is my 7th year back in the building where I began kindergarten and graduated high school. We have about 310 students. 95-96% are native. We have just a couple of non-native families within our community. Everybody else here is native, primarily Shoshone and Paiute, but also people from other tribes who have come to call Owyhee home.
Thank you, Lynn. And, just hearing about where your school's located and the community is geographically located in rural parts of Nevada. Just thinking about that, from the moment the pandemic hit and your school shifted to distance learning up until January, when you returned to a school hybrid model, what have been some challenges and barriers been for your school and community with digital learning?
Thank you. From the onset of the pandemic, while we have devices, we have a 1-to-1 ratio of Chromebooks within our building that we've been able to acquire over the course of years through various grants, through Victory Schools, through Title I, through our CTE programming, we have a 1-to-1 ratio. So while we had the equipment, what we didn't have was the infrastructure for how to achieve internet. From the onset of cell service, and Owyhee was one of the last places to get it. We have one tower, and the tower provides about a 10-mile range of service, but we have a mountain right next to us, and the cell tower, it only really provides service to one cell phone carrier. So again, we had devices, no way to get online. So we spent most of the spring just doing paper, and not knowing really what the pandemic was going to allow us to do as far as receiving that paper back. You know, we were asking kids to take photos of their work and send it in. But again, you know, not every kid has a cell phone, and not every kid has cell service. And so gearing up for this school year, one of the things that we were able to do was work with the Elko County School District and get a smart spot that works with this cell tower. And that was really wonderful. That hotspot though, we didn't get 300 of. We got about 100. So that meant we had to, if you were a single student within a household and you got that device, you were all right for the most part. But if you are in a household that has many children, or in many instances multi-generational with a lot of students in it, that hotspot was really only intended to support one device. And with our one cell tower, it was a traffic jam. It was a digital traffic jam getting kids online. And we had a lot of kids give up. We had a lot of families say, this is too hard. This is too challenging. How can we get our kids online? What do we need to do? We don't even have a computer except the one this kid brought in, and I don't know how to turn it on. So there, because again, many of our children are in homes that are multi-generational. Sometimes it's the grandparents, sometimes it's the great-grandparent who are helping them to get online, that it ends up being not just the child, but the adults that are supposed to be there to help don't have the skill set they need to help them. So we worked with the tribe. The Shoshone-Paiute tribes is a sovereign nation, and the tribal government here is made up of a chairperson and 6 council members. We meet with them weekly as a school, and along with other stakeholders in the community, to kind of let them know what our needs are and have them, we try and be responsive to each other. So one of the things that the tribe started doing is working with some technology companies to build some infrastructure. And they were able to use some of their CARES money to begin that process of getting fiber. Most homes do not have internet. So the tribe now is working to build that infrastructure for our children so that they can get online more easily. The tribe also used some CARES Act money to provide an internet subsidy to families in the instance that the device that the school provided was insufficient. They could go and purchase additional devices with that subsidy provided by the tribe. In the interim, we got additional devices. We got devices from other companies that work on other parts of our reservation that are not served by this single tower. We've had to patchwork it together, but we've been very innovative and very creative and very persistent in trying to link kids to the building. So, but it was hard. We lost a lot of interest. We lost kids. Our participation was low. There are some cultural norms that kids don't like to show their face on camera. So even if they got the camera up, you know, it was not very interactive because of, you know, the unwillingness of people to show their faces on film. So once we got into hybrid, and thankfully, we've gotten into hybrid. I think we're in week 4. Week 4 of hybrid that began on January 25th. Our participation rates are in-person attendance has jumped at our junior high level from 10% during the second week in December to 65% our first week of hybrid, which includes those kids who are home but may not be logging in. So that's phenomenal though. that is a phenomenal. It's 65 attendance is not good, but it's better than 10. Um, we have kids here every day. You know, I go and greet them every day and say, thank you for being here. Today is such a tremendous gift. Remember to log in on your distance days. You still have to log in. You are still responsible for the learning. But I want to say that because they're in person now, our digital participation has also increased because we've brought them back in. You know, they've missed that socialization, they've missed the instruction. We have a lot of catching up to do. But were it not for the digital divide, you know, we did have some kids who were successful. We did have some kids who elected to go to Elko County School District's Northeastern Nevada Virtual Academy and just do full distance. We have kids who are still choosing full distance. So it does work for some kids. And it's nice because before that wasn't an option. And now we found something that works for kids that we didn't have before. So I'm really thankful though for the opportunities that computers and internet provide. I think about, you know, growing up here and the power would go out and we would sit in school and still learn in the dark. And that's true. You know, we'd come to school, we'd sit, we'd learn, but we could because it was chalk. Now, you know, we rely so much on technology. It's really wonderful that all of this, you know, unfortunate events though have led to some positive outcomes, which is that every kid has a device, every kid has internet. And we are just as modern as everybody else in America. And that's also a misconception of Native people that we're, you know, stagnant and stuck in, you know, some historic times, and we're not. We're very modern. We just don't often get it at the same time as everybody else, but we get it.
Thank you, Lynn. I think you kind of touched on this already, but I'm really wanting to hear. So, you know, despite these challenges, and you shared some of the positives that have come out as well, but what are you most proud of about how your community was able to come together and what you were able to accomplish? What are you feeling about, like, we did this, we did it together? What are you most proud of?
Um, the collaboration. So I have some really wonderful partners at Nevada Department of Education, Ferdina Dry Romero, also with the Nevada Indian Commission, Stacy Montu. We were able to work together to bring in some virtual presentations that, you know, were it not for the virtual platform, those things would not have happened. We have been forced to think creatively about how we approach things, but it's also expanded our capabilities. You know, we can bring in, we did this whole all-star event for suicide prevention, and we were able to bring in Native, you know, music producers, film and television and internet influencers. We were able to bring them into our home in our community and have them speak directly to us and say, Duck Valley Shoshone Paiute people, I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California to tell you how important I think you are. Those are things that we have been able to accomplish through the digital enhancements that we had, but we're not using to their potential. But also, you know, the circumstances have forced us to adapt and be creative. And I for certain know those would not have happened otherwise. And I'm so thankful because that now we have an avenue, you know, we're building a pathway so that we can continue to, I don't know, increase that network of people we work with and how we share information and how we connect. And kids are on the other side becoming more comfortable with showing their faces now. So even when they're doing their digital learning from home, you know, they're a little more likely to turn on their camera now. And we're thankful for that.
Lynn, I have a whole page of notes from all the fantastic things that you have accomplished in Duck Valley and just working within the community and making sure that the technology is put in place. One thing I've noted here is that you've expanded so many opportunities for your community and for your students and families. Thinking about that, how do you plan to continue to use these tools to move forward?
Thank you. At the school level, I'm really excited about our opportunities in like AP honors, getting kids maybe some dual credit opportunities through the community college, Great Basin College, which is an ELCO, even other tribal colleges and universities. Those are things that now that we've built a system and we have, we're continuing to work on our infrastructure, opens the possibilities for learning beyond the school day and also learning beyond high school. We have, we're better preparing our students now for college and post-secondary by having this like unfortunate series of events, but brought us, our resilience and our strength to the surface. That's part of our cultural teachings. We're still here because of those characteristics. So I'm hoping that we can continue with the digital platform. I think it is extremely helpful. And again, when the power goes out now and your laptop is charged and my laptop is charged and our devices are plugged, our hotspots are plugged into our devices, we can still learn, and we can still engage with each other. Those are no longer barriers. We're excited to get back to in person. We're excited to be amongst friends. At the same time, this has now expanded our network so that we can do that globally and not just within our community.
Thank you, Lynn, for being with us this afternoon. You have shared so much information and actually just fantastic information on how the Duck Valley Shoshone-Paiute tribe has overcome and successfully integrated distance learning into your community. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That was Lynn Manning John from the Oahe School. She shared a powerful story on how her school and was able to help her students and their families. So really powerful story this afternoon. Our next video that we're going to share with you today comes from Lower Deering Elementary School, an educator by the name of Mike Lang. Thanks, Mike, for joining us. We are really honored to have you here this afternoon. Just want to introduce Mike Lang. Mike Lang is a 2018-2019 Teach Plus Nevada Policy Fellow. Mike presently teaches technology and blended learning at Lower Deering Elementary School in the Clark County School District. He has been teaching in Las Vegas since 2007. Mike greatly appreciates his teaching experiences at Title I schools and has earned multiple awards for his technology expertise. He has recently been recognized as a Apple Distinguished Educator and as a PBS Digital Innovator.
Awesome. Mike, thanks again for being here. We're going to jump into our questions. I'd like you to share a little bit more about how you got involved with education technology and how has your training shaped your work as you pivoted for distance learning?
All right, so when I never envisioned myself as a teacher, and I think when like going back and thinking about all the places you've been taken, that's one of the interesting things about my journey, that I never envisioned myself doing this. And so when I graduated from undergraduate school, it was with a degree in sociology. And I went to one of my professors. He was like, Mike, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I'm going to go and study. I want to do research and stuff like that, like you. Like, no, you'd be wasting your time. It's not something you should do. You know what you should do? You should teach. Not a lot of Black guys teaching. So I was, oh, okay, interesting. How do I do that? Like, I've got a degree in sociology, and I was blessed enough to be allowed entrance into a program at the University of Notre Dame that prepared teachers that did not have traditional education backgrounds to become instructors. Was sent down to Mississippi, and when I got down to Mississippi, our books were outdated. There were it was a lot of love, and there was great pedagogy going on, but it's just like the resources were not there, and that really stuck with me the first 2 years of my instruction, that my kids didn't have the hands-on technology integration possibilities. And so I left Mississippi and I went to Taiwan to teach English, which was really awesome. And that's where my journey in ed tech kind of really took off. I happened to be looking for strategies for ELs because I was running this English program at this elementary school. And I was like, how do I do this? I didn't have any classic training on, HQSI and SIPE at the time. And so I'm trying to teach myself how to do this. And I happened to be on the internet one night, and a guy, this is the first year the iPod became a thing. Guy is on his blog talking about how he's teaching off of his iPod. Oh man, this is really cool. Like, I want to do that. I think I could do that. So I'm following his instructions and stuff. I go buy an iPod. Like, all right, man, look, I'm going to take this and I'm going to do this stuff. And I started loading my presentations, loading my music on there. We really, started to teach kids through classic rock and some hip hop and stuff. And it was really cool seeing my little Taiwanese kids learn Steppenwolf in order to have conversational English, right? So when I got the iPod, I was hooked. And I ended up, when I moved to Vegas, Dr. Rebecca Johnson was my principal at Kirkell Adams Elementary School. She has since retired, great principal. And I got there, and there was a laptop cart in the hallway that no one was using. And suddenly that laptop cart disappeared because it went into my classroom and I locked the door. And so that was, I was like, well, now my kids have one-to-one, and that was like 2007 or something like that. And so our kids were, they each had a blog. They were recording with Audacity. So they had the little podcasts and things they were doing. I was blessed enough again to get into, we had the Teaching American History grant from NCCSD at that time. And one of the perks of that was receiving an iPod, 160 gig iPod. And so I was able to continue that as well. And fun times, was in that program for 2 years. And again, it really reinforced that this is the way that I needed to go and the way that I thought that education was moving. And so I left there, eventually went to West Prep, and from West Prep to the former school that's formerly known as Kit Carson. And when I was there, every kid had a MacBook Pro. And that was really when I got into the Apple stuff, because I had to learn how this ecosystem worked in order to get our students prepared for utilizing that on a regular basis. And so I really had fun helping kids build videos and build websites and do those kind of things, and saw how it was an extension of our reading program, was an extension of our math program. It really reinforced those skills in a real world sense. And I think that's the draw to me with technology, is that you're just not taking a test, you're applying things that you're learning in class, in your classroom, to build something that's tangible that you can show someone and say, hey, I know I learned this because look at this. And I think that's the real attraction for students, because as a small aside, one of my students right now has 1,000 TikTok followers. Now, this is a person who create content in the current in vogue mode, but we're not teaching them how to do that in school. So why aren't we allowing that student to go and use TikTok to express themselves in their reading class, in their math class, et cetera? It's an authentic way to demonstrate learning. And so, the power of seeing technology at every step of my journey. I was a digital learning coach for 1.5 years here in Clark County. Before that program was ended, I left there, and I've been at Deering ever since. And we moved from a place where there were 2 iPad carts to every kid having an iPad from the time they were in pre-K to the time they left in 5th grade. And teachers being very reticent about using the devices to, oh my goodness, I cannot teach without this iPad and be able to shoot this content to my students very quickly. And so just becomes a situation where I think if we utilize the technology correctly, we're creating a generation of creators. If we don't utilize it, then we're going back into this previous dispensation of of school, where students were making things for their immediate audience, but not the wider audience. And I think that technology gives us that ability to say, here's something that I made in class, but world, tell me what you think about this. This is how I know that I understand things. And that's why that's what I'm hoping that a lot of teachers are really understanding right now, is that the greater world can see the cool things that you're doing in your classroom.
Mike, thank you for sharing those thoughts. I really liked how you talked about how, helping kids use these tools, these technology tools, to really reinforce their skills with math and reading. Something that is really important this time as we are looking at, helping educators across the state understand this using that technology.
Mhm.
So with that, Mike, just thinking about your students, how have your students responded to the shift of distance learning at the beginning of COVID-19? And
I think very much, Mark. The cool thing about, and I'll give my principal a shout out here. When I came to her at Deering, I came to her with some conditions. I said, "Hey, I will come if you give me." We had a Mac lab at the school at that time. If you give me the Mac lab as my classroom, and if we work on a 5-year plan to get everybody one-to-one iPads here. And she was very open to that idea. And with that being the case, our students had already been using the iPads on a daily basis for instruction before COVID. So before we were out of school, this was not a foreign concept to them in a lot of ways. Maybe your kindergartners, but even them, that was the middle of the school year, it was March. And so I think schools that were utilizing technology proficiently before the pandemic probably fared a little bit better, with students not having to learn how to use the device in addition to learning their content. And so when we went to that emergency period at the end of last school year, it was really kind of simply oh, you have to go to school at home. It wasn't, I had to learn this product. And so we still had, I think, students who were reasonably able to complete their work, to check in and go on Google Meets and all that kind of stuff like that. It wasn't the shift wasn't learning the technology. This year, I think the difference was you had a brand new crop of kindergarten students who'd never been to school before. And I think that was the challenge for us, was how do you go and take somebody who has never physically been in this place where there's different rules and different expectations, give them the device, and then ask them and they're grown up to figure out how we're going to do all this stuff, even with the scaffolding that we had, even with some of the opportunities for parents to drop in and, hey, we'll help you out. There was some initial discomfort at the beginning of the school year. I think we worked through a lot of those pain points coming forward. But I think that one of the cool things that has happened is there's been some deeper trust between educator and grown up, at least from my perspective, in terms of, you see what we do now. That's not hidden behind concrete walls. You are privy to some of the techniques. You're privy to the relationships we have with your students and the relationships your students have with us. And I think that would not have happened but for the pandemic. Like, we were going back to school, you drop your kid off, you kiss him on the forehead, tell him to go Mr. Lane's class. Like, we don't have an actual relationship other than hi and bye. And maybe you show up at a parent teacher conference or something like that. But like, every day is a parent teacher conference. Every day you hear, the chatter behind kids a lot of times, where mom is like, hey, you know that answer. And you're like, oh, that's hilarious. Or you tell a joke and suddenly you hear a grown-up voice behind the camera laughing too. It's kind of, it's really it's really been eye-opening how I think our relationships have strengthened with our parents, where you're not just a name on a sheet of paper, especially as a specialist, when you're seeing all 800 some odd kids, and you don't get to do the parent conferences because they're doing that with their homeroom teachers. Being able to say, hey, I know that guy, that's Mr. Lang. and really get that kind of just community notoriety. And I think a lot of teachers are celebrities now in their neighborhoods that perhaps weren't before, because everybody know, oh yeah, I've seen that person on the Zoom before, the Google Meet or whatever. They're cool. They tell me jokes and whatever. So I think that the pandemic, have there been some pain points and things we need to improve on? 150% yes. I think there's a lot of things we can improve upon. Have there been a lot of things that hopefully we're going to learn and keep going forward? I think 150% as well. That again, if there's an ability to integrate technology meaningfully in your class, I think teachers are understanding the importance of that.
Yeah, Mike, I'm so glad you brought up the piece about relationships with family members, and especially like the specialist perspective. It's not something I had thought about before, as I'd previously been a pre-K teacher, but didn't serve in that specialist role when you have multiple students. But just this idea I heard of like a deeper amount of trust and really transparency, right? And that communication that's happening both ways, I think is a beautiful thing. And it excites me to think that we can start taking that and moving it forward and not letting it stop once the pandemic is over and everyone is back in person.
Definitely.
And so I think you were kind of moving towards this, but my next question for you is, what strategies do you have for Nevada educators as they work to establish a change in delivery modalities for instruction, which sounds like it's something you have a great level of comfort with, but for educators who aren't quite there yet and are, have had to make this quick shift and transition, what recommendations and strategies do you have for them?
I think everything, the thing I say all the time is Marzano's classic book is the art in science of teaching, right? Art comes first. So, I mean, looking at yourself as an artist first and saying, okay, cool. How do I get my brand of, my personality, my, how I look at the world to our students in this authentic way that's going to allow them to see me as a person first, right? And I think that, when kids understand that, hey, you're a person, you like to eat hamburgers and joke, and, you got dogs, like they have dogs, like, when they understand that you're just a person, I think kids are like, oh, cool, yeah, we have some things in common, that works. So kind of that authenticity, that artistry, I think is important. But I also think just taking it slowly. And I think that's one of the things I've learned from the pandemic is that you cannot do everything all the time. There is a place you need to concentrate and say, I just want to get better in this area. And, 1% better every day. We're not trying to, suddenly become this, I'm totally comfortable using X, Y, and Z. And I think that you don't have to, even the teachers like myself who have the bells and whistles, who have the filters on their cameras that make them, bunny rabbits appear and stuff like that. You don't have to do that in order to be a successful teacher online. I think that a lot of it still goes down to basic pedagogy. If you're a pedagogically sound teacher, you're going to find ways to connect to your students, whether it's with puppets, whether it's just laughter, whatever you were doing, you're just doing it where instead of one place, we're in 30 places at one time, right? And so I think everything stems from authenticity. If kids go and smell, if any group of individuals in the world, kids smell when you're being a fraud. So, and they will go in, and that's not what that guy does, man. Nah, that's not what it's, and they'll go in that grapevine stuff will happen. So I think that that's one of the things. The other thing in terms of instruction is just make sure your lessons are lessons you would want to have taught to you in the first place, right? So there's a situation which if those tables were turned and somebody was in front of you and you would like, nah, this is not, hey, perhaps think about some different things. And that's not tech tools. That's just, how do we make this thing engaging enough that someone wants to pay attention to us for 30 minutes while we're physically not in the same room? How do you do a television show without the bells and whistles? And again, that's why, humor to me is a way that we constantly reinforce that. Especially, you said you were a pre-K teacher. Your little ones like to laugh. They like to see stuff on your head, or like, Mr. Like, why you have lipstick on today? I don't have any lipstick on. Yeah, yes, you do. Like, okay, just being silly to be silly. Your pets, your spouse, weird things you got in the mail, throwing your little weird drawings up. Like, kids like that kind of stuff. And again, once they see you as a human being, I think then kids will do whatever you want them to do, even if it's the most boring, worst things in the world. You just, hey, we have to do this today because this test has to be done. All right, Mrs. Lang, just because you asked, we'll do this really quickly. So everything's relationships, everything's authenticity, and then the learning the tech stuff. You get there. I mean, there's certain, big bang for your buck tools. I think Clark County's investment in Nearpod was a great decision because it's, if teachers are familiar with Google Slides or with PowerPoint or something, it's a similar enough product. They can use that and put it right in their classroom. So that's something you can deal with. And then just being patient with yourself. I think a lot of teachers were really trying to go from zero to hero very quickly, rather than saying, you know what, kids, today we're just going to talk. And Miss Jones is going to figure out tomorrow, right? So I think that was that would be the advice I would give teachers. And really, once we get out of this, not going back to pre-pandemic teacher person, kind of looking at it and challenging yourself and saying, hey, I don't need to be, an IBM certified teacher. I just need to be better than I was the day before. And really kind of looking at a lot of the, one of the things I will give, Superintendent Ebert a huge shout out. She's really leading from the front here in terms of providing resources at no cost to any teacher that needs them in the state, or actually in the world, because the websites are freely available on the internet, to come through and get PD. And so if you needed PD, if you're a Nevada teacher or beyond, I mean, we have a ever-growing library of resources that can be tapped into.
Mike, just thinking about some of the thoughts that you were just sharing with us, it's really important that all educators right now hear that you can't do everything all the time. And I'm really glad you shared that with us this afternoon. And also, it really comes down to, good practice and, engagement and building those relationships as well. So
100%.
And Mike, just thinking about our next question, you mentioned all the work that the Clark County School District has done in terms of investments with Nearpod. But thinking about a technology tool, what is one that is one of your favorites that helps deliver instruction?
I just love cameras. So I'm a big, like, taking your iPad, taking your iPhone. Like, everyone has a camera on their device. My father still has a flip phone, so I won't say everyone. So most of us have cameras on their devices. And the camera is not something that's like a super difficult thing to use. Like just flipping it over and saying, hey, this is Mr. Lang. I'm walking down the street. I just saw 3 pink Cadillacs. What do you predict the 4th car is going to look like? Just simple stuff like that is not super invasive. You don't have to be super technical about. So cameras on any device is like, that's the first thing I go to. That's one of the first things I make sure our students are understand how to use is, telling a story just with you standing in front of a camera. And they're on camera all the time. Google Meet, they're on camera. The Zoom, they're on camera. Why not take that in? That's your storytelling medium right there. And every grade level has a expectation that you digitally publish, whether with a grown up or not. There's your digital publishes. Do your your reflection every day with turning on your camera and saying, today was a great day, Mr. Lang. We went and we ate nachos while we read a story. All right, great. End of situation. Post that to your website or send that to Mr. Lang or whatever. You have this really easy way to kind of capture kids' thoughts for the day and whatnot. So I think the camera, no matter what device, whether it's a Chromebook, an iPad, a phone, or whatever, that is a no cost tool that you can spin around and use, any number of ways. And my kindergarten friends right now, we're doing photography with them. If a 5-year-old can handle that thing and go outside and, put a picture together, then I think all your students are going to be able to do that. And it excites them. Like, photography is something that excites them. Videography excites them. You're not going to have to force a kid to turn that camera on and start shooting pictures all over the place. So I think a lot of times we think of tools and we think we got to spend money and we got to learn this and whatnot. Sometimes the greatest tools we have at our disposal is the ones that we overlook. And again, that camera is dynamite. I do not buy any devices that do not have cameras attached to them for that reason. I can really, really quickly put a lesson together where, what, I want you to make silly faces, and I want you 5 silly faces. And then what you're going to do is you're going to tell me a story with those 5 silly faces. That's a 15-minute lesson. Every kid's going to want to do it. They show their screens. Hey, I made this face because I felt like, you know, last night I had to eat Brussels sprouts and I hate Brussels sprouts with slang. All right, great. And you have 100% buy-in because, again, there is no student. I don't think there's a person generally, even our very shy people in the world, if you give them a camera, they're going to do some stuff with it.
Yeah, I love this idea you're bringing up of just like, I think I'm totally fall into this category when I think about digital learning and technology. I'm like, oh, it has to be super technical and it has to be really fancy and it has to have 10 steps, otherwise it doesn't count. But this idea of using these tools and resources that are actually a lot of times part of our daily routine in whatever setting, but I just like that idea that keeping it simple and then building off of where like that comfortable entry point is. I love that. Um, and I did want to say before I ask the final question, Mike referenced the website that we have with tools. And if there's any listeners that don't yet know about this website, I'm just going to plug it here now. It's the nvdigitallearning.org website. And we have tons of resources on there that Mike referenced, tools that are being uploaded every week, videos, PD. And so this is a great place for you to access some of that content. It's also linked on our Nevada Department of Education page as well. But let's move on to our final question, Mike. What inspires you as educators, parents, and students are all managing to navigate this somewhat new terrain for some of us of distance learning? What inspires you?
Um, the future. I think. I mean, you really have a sense of hope. Or at least I have a sense of hope every day that I do this. Where you like, you start to envision in your head this new world where there are going to be multiple ways for kids to do school. We're going to be very innovative in the space, and I think we're uniquely positioned as a state to really push this forward when we have an opportunity in terms of the size of our state. We're not a super huge, very, very populous state. We don't have as many students as, say, the Californias and the New Yorks have, right? We have an opportunity to really move students. It was inspiring to see at the beginning of the pandemic, people rally together to make sure kids had devices and kids had internet and stuff like that. And so I think that um, when there becomes these great challenges, I think heroes rise to the fore, right? We have this situation where the collective spirit of society kind of says, hey, you know what, it's time to change, it's time to come and rally together. And so I think this was one of those opportunities. And I think that hopefully what we will see is greater communication between school and community. Because I think that was, again, I don't know any teachers that right now are not happy with the fact that, again, I can talk to the grown-up person. Your kid didn't understand what I just said. Go to Mr. Lang's website, the video's there. Is that over this side, Mr. Lang? Yeah, just share your screen. Yeah, right there. And now we suddenly have a parent who knows where their kids' work is and how to work. That was not something that was regular and common when we were locked behind doors, right? It was, hey, the kid left. There's no true absence now, right? The kid can always get their work because it's online, log in, and there's your stuff. So my hope is that there are people who are thinking on the margins right now and saying, how do we go and not lose? Are there things that need to be improved? Yes, there are things that need to be improved. Are there opportunities to really push the competency-based model that hopefully is coming down the pipe from the state so the kids can go at their own pace? You can't do that unless you're using technology. That's not going to work any other way. A teacher does not physically have the ability to serve 30 people in real time at the same time, right? Do we have the opportunity to support the learner profile, the graduate profile work that the state's trying to do? Absolutely, positively. The fact that we all have one learning management system that everybody can go and plug into, that's super amazing. And now I can work with a teacher in Elko or a teacher in Churchill. That was not something it was on people's radar before this. So I'm very inspired. I really think that we're in a good place. And I think the next 5 years are going to be really telling about what we learned from the pandemic, and also an opportunity for us to flex on the rest of the country and say, look at what we're doing here. We learned, we adapted, we improved on practices here, and we have not only the fastest growing state in terms of schools in the country, but also the most innovative state in terms of how schooling is done in the nation. So yeah, I'm super pumped, and I can't wait to be a part of that, and hopefully that we'll continue with the dynamic leadership that we're having from the top in our state to make sure that moves forward.
Thank you, Mike. And just thinking about one of your closing quotes, I think Nevada has learned, and Nevada has definitely adapted to distance learning during this pandemic. And I think educators are really have gotten a lot from everything that you have shared with us this afternoon. So thank you so much for your time this afternoon. And
Oh, I did want to ask Mike, is there a website or an app that you'd want to share with folks in case they were interested about learning more about your work and some of the tools you're designing, anything like that?
Like a personal website type deal. We're kind of like, I kind of go into the banner of Deering. So if you go to deeringelementary.org, we have some of the stuff that we're doing there. Personally, myself and my business partner Webbs, we are the Intelligent Hoodlums. We do a lot of professional learning and stuff in the Valley. So people probably the Nevada conferences and stuff, we run the back end of those things. So we really do that. But we're always here we're both adopted Nevadans. So we try to go give back to our adopted community here. But one of the things to just like really make sure that the teachers understand is you don't have to become Steve Jobs tomorrow. And I think that was a lot of pressure at the beginning, was this, oh my God, I have to move to digital, I have to learn this and that. Smile, laugh, drink your coffee, eat your cookies and stuff, and read your story. And then kind of just, again, what the big mantra for us is, be better than you were yesterday. And that's learning how to add one more Google slide to your project. That's where you are. If it's learning about some new tool someplace, but again, you cannot go wrong going to the digital engineers website and going through those things and kind of pacing yourself and giving yourself some grace. And I think that's what teachers are very bad about, giving themselves grace and giving themselves an opportunity to just take a nap sometimes, calm down, slow down, the work will come back. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's such a great honor to be part of the profession, because we have so many hardworking, dedicated educators, but sometimes we got to, drink the coffee and, watch Netflix for a couple hours if you need to.
well, thank you again, Mike. And again, Michael Lang from Laura Deering Elementary School.
Indeed.
Clark County School District.
Much appreciated. Thank you for having me.
Great. So super lucky again to have heard from Mike and to get more of that elementary school perspective. And whenever I hear Mike talk, I just get really hopeful about the opportunities for digital learning now and in the future. Our next speaker and last speaker of the day is Bill Cox from Lander County, and Mark is going to pull up his video now. Hey everyone, we are super lucky to be joined today by Bill Cox, who is a teacher at Battle Mountain High School teaching physical science in Lander County. He previously taught combined grade science for 24 years and is now in his 37th year of teaching. He earned his doctorate in 2011 in teacher leadership and continues his passion for research and education. Bill, we're so grateful to have you here. We appreciate your time and we're super excited to hear about your journey with the digital world. So I'll start with our first question. Tell us about the quick shift to digital learning at the start of the pandemic versus now. What was that current learning curve like for you?
Thank you, Caitlin. Yeah, at the start of the pandemic last spring, as a school, high school, we were sending out paper packets to our students. Once a week, we'd collect those packets, grade them. And personally, I didn't have much of a use of technology in my classroom, besides the use of a smart board. And certainly the kids didn't have anything with technology at the homes or anything else. However, the district had decided that they were going to get a Chromebook for each of the students. And so I spent the summer learning how to use Google Classroom, rethinking how my classes would look, what students would be doing. And it was really exciting because it was a whole different way of teaching, a whole different way of presenting concept, of figuring out what they knew, what they didn't know, and where to go next. And so obviously a steep learning curve, but I had teachers who could help me. When I first walked into the classroom, I had students who were helping me with the Chromebook and, hey, there's an easier way to do this. And so it was exciting, something new to try. So it was started out very stressful, but very exciting, and also it was a challenge.
Bill, it sounds like you had a great network to support you and for this new venture into Google Classroom and learning all the new tools. Just thinking about our next question, what new opportunities and positives have come out of this shift to digital platforms and tools? And how will you continue to use them in your instruction moving forward?
Well, you know, technology is increasing in every aspect of our lives. And in the future, our students are going to have to be proficient at using technology, not only for production, but for collaboration, communication. And so, even though in my classroom, my use of technology, especially with the students, was limited, I think it is now more student-centered. My classroom has increasingly become more student-centered. It has been tremendous motivating to me as an educator. Next week in our school district, we're going to 100% in-person learning. And I'm going to continue to use Chromebooks and the technology that I've introduced with these students. I'm going to continue that. I think it's going to help with a blending learning environment. And actually, I'm looking forward to exploring personalized instruction as well. And I think this technology is really going to help me in that aspect.
Yeah, Bill, it's exciting to hear that, you know, while you are returning to 100% in person, that all this time that you spent investing in relearning the tools, kind of exploring what different methods you could use for different types of instruction. It's exciting to hear that that doesn't have to go away, right? Just because you're back in person. These are all tools that are ways of the future, like you said, that you can just start integrating and really elevating lessons too, depending on you know, which tools and methods of instruction you use. So that's exciting.
Correct.
Oh yeah.
I really believe that. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. So Bill, I don't think you're alone in having to relearn or learn for the first time, navigating some of this new technology in the digital world and some of these tools. So for all the other educators out there, especially those who weren't previously utilizing digital tools, what advice do you have for moving forward and leveraging digital learning in the future?
Wow. I just say just start somewhere, even if it's a small thing like having students submit assignments electronically to your email. Um, you know, I had tried that actually years ago, just because even with Word, you can do the editing function. Um, that's powerful. And now that in Lander County, providing Chromebooks for all the students, I mean, that's awesome. I have staff that could help me. That was great. But even if you don't have that, just being able to submit assignments electronically, have students work collaboratively on a project like using Google Slides, anything like that, that is helping the students use technology to enhance their learning, to show their learning, I think is awesome. And as an educator, I would just say, there's nothing worse than getting stuck in a routine. We need to grow, and this forced me to grow. Last year was supposed to be my last year teaching. I was lucky enough to come this year as a critical shortage, and I'll tell you what, I love it. I love it because it stretched me. It caused me to learn new things and to do new things with my kids. And I think not only my students, but myself, we're better for it.
Bill, I love that mindset. I'm sure that there's been, like, those challenges and struggles along the way, but the fact that it was that learning moment for you to grow and to grow with your kids. And I'm sure that the impact of this in your community in the future as well is just opening up a lot of new potential experiences, and that's exciting. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm excited for people listening in to hear about the success you had in learning and growing, and that it's possible. Just, I love that you said, just start somewhere. It can be small
Right.
things, and then you can build on top of that.
Right. I think, so often we're afraid to start. Time's an issue, knowledge is an issue, but if you just start somewhere and just baby steps, it pays off. And like I said, I really, if I had another 20 years, this is how my classroom would look. I'm loving it. I really am. And I think it is helping the students, and I think it is what is the future.
Yep.
Well, we appreciate you being with us this afternoon, Bill. And again, Bill Cox from Battle Mountain High School. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks again, everyone that was able to join live. And if you're watching this recording, thank you for taking the time out of your day. That concludes our interviews with our educators. Remember, you can join us again, same time tomorrow, and we look forward to seeing you then.
Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody, and take care.